but it's definitely an answer which could help in getting private financing for adaptation. Will there be need for that? Yes. And we all know that we want to do everything to make sure that the climate change and the increase in temperature, everything is done now to get it under the thresholds which we defined. But on the short term, it is extremely clear that financing for adaptation is necessary. Everything we see these days in the impacts of climate change on our populations, we all know that we have to do as much as possible on the mitigation part to avoid that the next generations will be confronted with this. But in the next years, our populations will suffer. And it is unavoidable in the next years that it will increase, in despite of all the efforts that we will be doing. So, shifting gears on the adaptation side, it is not changing what we need to do on the mitigation side, but it is absolutely necessary to lower the human impact as much as possible. We will need any type of financing. And if we are here at an event which will focus on private financing, it is not to say that public financing will be less important. But at the moment at which we will need any type of financing, and we will need to work on any of these. As government, obviously public financing is something we have in our hands, and we will continue to increase the budgets we have put forward up to now. If we can work together with trusted partners, and really Incofin has been a trusted partner of us in the development field over the last decades. I've been 6 years Minister of Development, and Incofin, a good partner of us. Launching this very innovative fund is something that we are extremely positive about, and I'm really looking forward to hear Peter Buyssen more detail on the structure of what he wants to launch, and then listen to the panel to see how it could be filled in. So I have to say, I'm extremely optimistic on what we're trying here. On another side, I'm extremely concerned on the needs that we have. Bringing optimism and the fact of being concerned together is probably the way forward, and I'm really looking forward to having more details on what is being presented here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister, for your powerful words and vision. I believe that you brought up very powerful ideas and the vision on the fact that the optimism coupled with concerns actually paves the way to our today's reality. Thank you very much again, and it also reminds us our shared responsibility and the power of partnerships at all levels to achieve certain results. And with this, I would like to invite our second keynote speaker, Mr. Paul Buissens, the co-CEO of Incofin Investment Management. After an international career in finance at Deloitte and General Electric, Paul joined Incofin Investment Management in 2017, and since then he worked relentlessly to drive impact in emerging markets. And today, Paul will tell us more about this very initiative, Incofin's Climate Smart Microfinance Fund. The stage is yours, Paul.
Thank you, Alina. Can you hear me well? Good. So, dear Prime Minister, ladies and gentlemen, I'm truly grateful for your commitment to being here. Our mission at Incofin is to invest for impact, not just with impact, for impact. This means that for us, capital is a tool for higher ends. Capital is a fantastic tool to shape the world we want to live in. A tool that, of course, needs to be well remunerated, like good work needs to be well remunerated. We aim for two things at Incofin. First, inclusive progress. I'm trying to move the slides. One more. Come on. Can you move one more, please? Yes, perfect. We aim for two things at Incofin. First, inclusive progress. This means prosperity for everyone, good jobs for everyone, fair remuneration so that all families can live in dignity. Secondly, we aim for sustainable transitions. We want to transition to a world where all women are empowered, and we want to transition to a world where we live in harmony with our home planet. Over the next 2 weeks, we will certainly hear about how bad things are with our planet. But where there's a problem, there is often an entrepreneur out there to solve it. And our teams on the ground in emerging markets are meeting with more and more entrepreneurs who are tackling social and environmental challenges. Their companies aren't just socially conscious ventures, they are thriving businesses. Some of those companies are micro companies, and they play a very important role to improve livelihoods, and others are larger companies, providing jobs for many families. All those businesses with whom we work have significant impact. All those businesses are profitable, but none of those businesses scale fast enough. Why? Because they lack access to capital. And that is why I'm continuously on the road. That is why I'm here today. At Incofin, we bring people around the table to develop impact funds. We work with DFIs, with institutional investors, with families, with foundations, with banks and with companies. We work with all those parties to raise capital and invest in an inclusive and sustainable future. And believe me, raising capital is not easy, especially for impact in emerging markets, but it is possible. And it works when we have strong partners. One of those partners is BIO, the Belgium investment company for developing countries. Dear Prime Minister, I would like to thank you for supporting this organization and its talented team. They play a crucial role for actors like us who also raise private money, a crucial role. Over the last 20 years, we've invested $4 billion into financial institutions who provide financial services to micro, small and medium-sized companies in emerging markets. As you should be able to see on this slide, we have technical issues this morning, so it's the first session, and apparently everyone has the same remote control, and so someone is working on television. But as you should see on this slide, over the last 20 years, the asset class of financial inclusion has shown stable returns over several market cycles and very low volatility. And financial inclusion is also delivering positive impact. According to a 60 decibel study, 85% of small borrowers say that their business income 85%, and 90% indicates that their quality of life improved. During this COP, we will hear that we need more climate finance, more climate adaptation finance next to mitigation finance, and more emerging market finance. My message is that we should not forget the micro and small entrepreneurs. Yes, we need to finance large climate infrastructure projects, but we need also to scale access to finance at the level of micro and small entrepreneurs. They are the engine of prosperity for many families. They are resourceful, they are resilient, they can adapt their businesses, and they understand what to do in the face of climate change. We are convinced that financial institutions that focus on those entrepreneurs are critical to support the transition to a climate-resilient economy. We need to enable autonomous adaptation, and we need to grassroots resilient to climate change. Providing people with access to savings, to loans, to insurance, and to payment options will play a powerful role in helping communities to adapt. To build resilience against the increasingly severe impacts of warming climate, people need those financial tools to prepare for, to cope with, and to recover from extreme weather events and other climate challenges. This is especially important for low-income communities. Climate impact, despite leads to the problem. Access to financial services can also be crucial for women and girls, who are often central to their community's resilience efforts, but are more vulnerable to climate risk and less likely to have the tools to manage them. In short, building an inclusive financial system is key to helping the most vulnerable people shape their own path to resilience. It's a vital part of a fair and effective approach to climate adaptation, and it deserves a central place in the climate response. But financial products and services may fall short in addressing the unique challenges posed by climate change. We need solutions specifically tailored to strengthen climate adaptation and resilience. We need closer collaboration to identify, test, and scale those solutions. So what are we doing at Incofin? We've recently launched the Incofin Climate Smart Microfinance Fund. We target to invest $500 million to improve the resilience to climate change of 1.5 million people in emerging markets over the next 5 years. However, directing funds alone is not sufficient. Many financial institutions are currently ill-equipped to fully support their clients in climate adaptation. That is why we do not only provide financial assistance, but also non-financial support to navigate the complexities of client-related financial products and risk management. Thanks to this approach, we tend to finance sustainable agriculture practices like drop irrigation, clean drinking water and sanitation, circular economy projects, energy-efficient technologies like clean cooking stoves, solar energy and resilient habitat. And thanks to our rigorous impact framework, we will add value in 3 interconnected fields. First, promote sustainable, responsible and inclusive growth. Second, promote gender equality and women empowerment. And third, strengthen climate change resilience. Let me close with a small story. You should see a picture of Aisha. Aisha is 13 years old, that's the same age as my daughter Juliet. This morning, both girls will walk to school. But tonight, when school ends, their path will diverge. Juliet will get driven with her friends to her rock climbing practice. Aisha, on the other hand, will walk alone 4 kilometers to the closest water well. She will fill her 10 liters water jerry can and then walk 4 kilometers back. By the time she gets home, hours later, she will be exhausted, carrying water that is barely safe to drink. So what's the problem we need to solve here? It's of course more than the distance Aisha walks. It's the time she loses, the opportunities that slips away. Children like Aisha miss on essential things like education or the simple joys of adolescence. And it's not only children. Women in many communities bear the same burden. Hours spent fetching water are hours stolen from work, from leading the communities, from education. So, access to clean water is not just a basic need, it's a stepping empowerment. How many people don't have access to clean drinking water? 2 billion people. 1 out of 4 people on this planet lack access to safe and affordable drinking water. And with climate change, this is only getting worse. Luckily, there are financial institutions like Family Bank in Kenya that finance access to clean water. And with Incofin, we support this type of banks. Financial inclusion is one of the keys that we unlock a sustainable future. Can we improve people's lives in the face of climate change? The question is, how fast will we scale? Let's invest in climate adaptation for the future so that every child, no matter where they're born, can thrive, every woman is empowered, and every entrepreneur has access to the finance they need to build a resilient and thriving to build resilient and thriving companies. Thank you very much.
Wow, thank you, Paul. Thank you so much for this insightful conversation and so inspiring story. Thank you also for putting an accent on the critical aspect of gender and climate interrelation and how some layers of society are taking more burdens than others in the ongoing climate change. We will be very curious to learn more about this initiative in the second part of our event. So, and with here, I'm very happy to announce the second part and to ask our distinguished panelists to take the stage. And I will start with Joachim Leite. Joachim, please. So Joachim serves as the head of climate finance at the NDC partnership, supporting member countries across Africa, Asia, and Latin America in enhancing access to climate finance to advance their nationally determined contributions and sustainable development goals. His experience includes the integration of environmental, social, and economic dimensions into high-level decision-making, investment portfolios, and management system for leading public and private organizations. I am also delighted to invite to the stage our second speaker, Mr. Rustam Tairov. Please, Rustam, the stage is yours. Rustam is the director of the Financial Sector Sustainable Development Department at the Central Bank of Azerbaijan. Rustam is responsible for developing and implementing sustainable initiatives. He has played a key role in developing the Azerbaijan's first sustainable finance roadmap in 2023, and he also leads the cross-institutional expert group working on the Azerbaijan National Green Taxonomy, as well as Central Bank's initiative to improve the global alignment of sustainable finance taxonomies. Please, let's welcome Rustam. And I am also happy to call back you, Paul, so that we could deep dive further to private sector initiatives in the climate adaptation and resilience area. So we have 3 mics in total, so we will need to be collaborative on them. And let's kickstart our session with you, Joachim. Given that NDC partnership works in more than 90 countries and that you are working with really different stakeholders, private and public, I saw, thank you. So given that NDC partnership works in more than 90 countries across the globe, and then they are supporting private and public sectors, and you're making these connections in between developed and developing countries, investors, and the ones in need, could you please maybe tell us a bit more about the ongoing trends and the requests coming from the emerging markets in the area of climate adaptation?
For sure. Thank you very much. Can you hear me? Yes? So first and foremost, thank you very much. It's really a pleasure to be here today. No?
Yeah?
Can you hear me at the back? Great. So it's really a pleasure to be here today. It's also an honor to be part of this discussion. I think the Prime Minister already outlined, and also Paul, the critical need that we have in terms of mobilizing resources for climate finance. We are very far from what we need globally when it comes to the general trends, but specifically on adaptation finance, there has been a huge gap. So less than 6% of all climate finance is geared towards adaptation. That's according to the latest CPI report. Mm-hmm. And very challenging as well, the resources that are being channeled, they are mainly public sector finance. And most of them, more than 60%, in terms of market-based loans. So this is a big challenge for low-income and developing countries that already face very harsh fiscal conditions and limited. Sorry. Is this one better? Oh yeah, this one is better. Yeah, perfect. So I was saying, basically, so we have a big challenge in terms of mobilizing climate finance, especially adaptation finance, and the resources that we are mobilizing are not adequate to the ones that need it the most. So most of the finance is coming in the form of market-based loans, which makes a big challenge for low-income developing countries. And in this context, I think the launch of the Incofin and this type of initiatives where you can catalyze and mobilize private investments to private sector players at the national level are very, very important. Also because it helps to reach those that need it the most. So, as you mentioned, I work at the NDC partnership, and the partnership is a coalition of developed and developing countries. So 130 developed and developing countries and more than 100 international institutions, including MDBs, UN agencies, regional bodies, that came together with the objective to provide coordinated, tailored support to developing countries. So based on priorities that are communicated by national governments, a coordinated package of technical and financial support is delivered to countries. And adaptation requests are, just to give a sense, we are working on around 100 countries, and we have more than 2,000 requests related to adaptation. And most of those requests remain unsupported, meaning that there is still also need in terms of mobilizing technical support and financial support to many of those countries to be able to set the basic conditions in terms of understanding the priorities, the vulnerabilities, the risks that are in place, but more importantly also setting the plans, the strategies, and the financial instruments that will be able to match those. Most of the requests we receive are cross-sectoral, so they are more like upstream in terms of planning and defining the strategies and mechanisms to work. And when it comes to specific sectoral interventions, we have 3 sectors that stand out. The first one is water, and it's interesting that Aisha's example is on water. The second one is on agriculture and land use, so everything that relates to preparing and adapting for climate change in the rural sector. And the third one is related to oceans and coasts, so a huge challenge, especially for SIDS that are highly vulnerable to climate change impacts and rising sea levels. An interesting trend also is that many countries are seeing the dual benefits of mitigation and adaptation action. So sectors such as transport, infrastructure, and waste, where there is a dual benefit and countries are planning to pursue those. And one thing that we have seen and observed across the board, especially now looking into finance, is that the finance that is available is also very complex to access, very difficult in terms of the procedures, in terms of the requirements, and you have a myriad and very different types of opportunities, funds, public, finance, which makes a huge challenge for many of the developing countries to navigate this complex ecosystem. So because of that, we have worked together with our members, MDBs, UN agencies, but also we have established a very strong partnership with the GCF to put together what we are calling a climate investment planning and mobilization framework. So what it does is basically helping countries to set the processes and the steps that can enable them to more effectively mobilize finance. So it looks into elements such as the upstream elements, so institutional capacities, coordination capacities, mainstreaming of climate into public financial institutions such as ministries of finance, central banks, and other organizations, so they can set the enabling conditions and improve the enabling environments, but also looking into the specific challenges that the countries are facing. What are the priorities and what are the strong connections that you have between climate action and core development objectives such as jobs, poverty reduction, inequality, health, and education. And then based on that, set the foundations to identify what are the best sources of finance for the different resources that are out there and mobilizing those resources. And the idea of this approach is also to establish a very strong collaboration and collective approach, and identifying the priorities that can then be communicated to the partnership, which is a platform to mobilize support to developing countries, to the GCF, and to other stakeholders, so they can more effectively advance towards their priorities. So I'll stop there, but looking forward to the remainder of the discussion. Thank you.
This one doesn't work. Thank you very much for presenting view over the current trends and needs in the emerging markets. I think that it's very interesting what you have said on the cooperation, on the emergence of new actors. And yeah, with this, I'm happy to zoom on in one particular emerging market, our host country, Azerbaijan. So, Rustam, as practitioners, you know, when we invest in emerging markets, we sometimes hear from our financial institution counterparties that our markets are not yet ready yet. We do not have necessary frameworks in place yet for green bonds, for instance, or for any other ESG sustainability-linked bond, and etc. So as a regulator, I know that you have been heavily implied in the development of Azerbaijan's first sustainability framework, and we would be very happy to hear more about this initiative. What are the implementations, and actually what is expecting us more in this area, in this country? Thank you.
Thank you, Elvina. It's my pleasure to be here today. And first, I would like to congratulate you and all Incofin team for launch of Climate Smart Microfinance Fund. Answering your questions, I would like to discuss three aspects. First, what central bank did to advance sustainable finance, what's the initial results, and our future plans. Starting with what central bank already did, first I want to mention that Azerbaijan economy and financial sector exposure to climate risk is high, particularly physical and transition risk. If we look at physical risk specific to Azerbaijan, it includes increased heat wave, floods, desertification, and other natural events. Some central regions in Azerbaijan already face water shortage, and under severe climate scenarios, these challenges will only increase and will create a challenge for sectors like agriculture and other related sectors. And it will definitely impact financial institutions, its balance sheet. Responding to this challenge, Central Bank of Azerbaijan has made sustainability within the financial system as a key element of its strategic framework. And for this purpose, Central Bank of Azerbaijan adopted, as you said, Sustainable Finance Roadmap. And this roadmap has two overarching objectives. First is to manage risk stemming from climate change and other environmental risk. And second is to capitalize on emerging opportunities. And now let me walk you through some initiatives undertaken by Central Bank in the implementation of the roadmap. First, Central Bank has revised its corporate governance standard. And in this standard, we require banks to integrate ESG factors to the governance and risk management framework in financial institutions. And it also defines roles and responsibilities of the management bodies, supervisory bodies, and similar standards has been adopted for insurance and investment firms. Second is sustainable finance principles. Central Bank adopted this principle, which is based on double materiality approach and covers business strategy, risk management, governance, disclosure areas, and it requires financial institutions to measure the impact of ESG factors in short, medium, and long term, integrating them to the decision-making process. And then Central Bank adopted another specific guideline on managing climate and other environmental risk in banks. Apart from generally setting the framework for managing climate risk, it requires banks to measure their emissions across scope A, 1, 2, and 3 in business portfolio. And most importantly, in guidelines, Central Bank calls banks to incentivize clients which effectively manage their environmental risks by providing more favorable terms like lower interest rate or other terms. Finally, Central Bank, one of the key initiatives was capacity building within the financial sector. Together with our development partners, we have conducted a series of events to build capacity in financial institutions starting from expert level, mid-management level, and higher level to build awareness at all levels. And I can say that all these measures has already paid off. And our recent survey with financial institutions shows that banks, insurance, and other financial institutions are already aligning with roadmap, principles, and guidelines. More specifically, 60% of banks and insurance companies are already incorporating SDG factors in investment decisions and risk management. But there are problems as well. Many financial institutions are at the start of the process. They face challenges like data availability and internal expertise. We will continue to work in this direction together with our partners. Coming to our future next steps, probably the most immediate priority for us is adoption and onboarding of green taxonomy. Green taxonomy prepared by central bank in partnership with government entities and other stakeholders with the support of the World Bank will be announced in coming days. In generally, taxonomy is designed considering G20 principles and EU taxonomy. And taxonomy incorporates 6 environmental objectives along with do no significant harm and minimum social safeguard standards. And it balances stringent requirements and flexibility to the local context. I can't emphasize importance of the taxonomy enough. Recently, government unveiled its assessment showing that investment needs for transition to net zero requires huge investment, up to 200 billion US dollars. Obviously, significant part of these investments should come from private sector through financial institutions, and we think that taxonomy will play a significant role here. Equipped with taxonomy, financial institutions can enhance their green portfolio. And we also believe that international investments, international development partners, SDG funds, climate-related funds like today announced Climate Smart Microfinance Fund can enhance their operation in Azerbaijan using the green taxonomy. Let me stop there. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Rustam. Very insightful. And as private investors active in Azerbaijan, we are really looking forward to see this green taxonomy alive, which will, I very much agree, force on our discussions with local counterparties through these or other impact funds. Thank you very much. Paul, back to you. So this morning we heard a very inspiring story and philosophy behind ICMF, Incofin Smart Microfinance Fund. But I'm sure that a private initiative like this is not a road without challenges. So maybe let's go a bit back to reality of things, practicality of things, and hear from you, what does it mean to launch a fund like this for a private player?
Thank you, Alvina. Before talking about the challenges, I would like to talk a little bit about positive developments that we're seeing. The Prime Minister say I'm very optimistic. I'm also optimistic, although there are big challenges. But so let's start with those positive developments, and I have 4 of them. The first one is that there is much more demand for climate investment opportunities. If you look at pension funds or insurance companies, they have very long-term investment horizons. And they understand that to protect their profitability in the long term, they need to do climate investments. If you look at pension funds as well, their clients, their end clients, they don't only want to get monthly cash when they're getting older. They also want to live in a society where they have decent healthcare, where their children or grandchildren can have good education, when it's they can happily live in the country. So the impact is also important, not just the financial return. If you look at wealthy families, the money is coming in the hands of the younger generation, and they want return and impact. They want both. If you look at companies, they're more and more aware about the climate risks, and they want to invest for the long term to protect their profitability in the long term, also their reputation in the long term. So the demand for climate investments opportunities is increasing. That's the first one. The second one is there are more investment opportunities as well. There are many entrepreneurs who are building new companies, who are conscious about the climate change problems, who are very driven, especially in emerging markets. That's what I love about emerging markets. That's what I love about being in those markets and meeting with their people. There is an energy in the young generation. They want to achieve things. They're very driven. That's the second thing. The third thing is that positive development is we have now, if you look at financial inclusion and microfinance, we have more than 25 years of track record. We can show what kind of risk return investors can expect. And that makes a huge difference. We have this data. Investors can look at the data and check if it fits their investment requirements. It's not a bet anymore. That is third development. And the fourth development, it's regulation. I think regulation is going in the right direction to push us to invest more and more for impact. Regulation is not perfect, but it creates the right transparency. It's the right step forward, and it pushes very hard. So I think those are very positive developments. Now, if you look at the challenges, for me, the biggest challenge is how do you scale? That's the biggest challenge. Impact investments is about three things. It's about focusing on the greatest needs. It's about maximizing your impact for every dollar invested, and it's about scale. If you look at the first two ones, focusing on the greatest needs and maximizing your impact for every dollar invested. I think at Incofin, over the last 20 years, we've really focused on that. The greatest needs, financial inclusion. I mean, access to finance is an important, it's a basic need. We don't realize it, but you know, even in my country, it's impossible to buy a house if you don't have a loan. It's impossible to buy a car if you don't have an insurance for your car, etc. Finance is a basic need. That's the first thing. Maximize your impact. We've been working on standards to measure impact. Those standards are good. Now it's about, you know, scaling those impacts, making sure that everyone scaling those standards, making sure everyone uses those standards. But the biggest challenge today is really scale. That should be on top of everyone's agenda. It's on top of our agenda at Incofin. It's not easy, but it's a collective responsibility, I believe. If you look at impact investing today, according to the latest GIN report, there's $1.6 trillion invested for impact. In absolute number, it looks like a big number, but in relative terms, it's still very tiny. So we need to scale is the biggest challenge that I see. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you. Well, scale is an issue, and that's also one of the key subjects of this year COP, how to scale finance, climate finance. We've heard already this morning, and I mean, it's no secret that to scale, you need to have everyone on the board, right? And you need to be able to build all kind of partnership and collaborations. And so I'm back to you, Joachim. Have you seen any successful partnership in climate finance involving multiple stakeholders in the emerging markets that you have been covering? Maybe you can share some, you know, successful examples from your experience.
No, thank you very much. And yeah, I think I was reflecting on the points, the 4 points for optimism that Paul shared, and I agree with all of them. And one of the things that I wanted to, so I also want to share some of the interesting developments that we have seen in the climate space in the last years, and on climate finance specifically. And I would try to share like four key areas. The first one is the increased engagement of ministries of finance in the climate change agenda. So 10, 15 years ago, it was exclusively a Ministry of Environment discussion. But now more and more you have seen ministries of finance that are trying to better understand what are the climate change impacts, how they are going to affect economic and financial indicators, and what they can do about it. So interesting developments that we have seen. So I'll give examples of two countries we've worked recently. The first one is Jamaica, second one Sudan. So both have worked through the Ministry of Finance, but engaging the different stakeholders, the different line ministries, to model the climate change impacts into the different economic sectors and understand the impacts in terms of GDP growth, inequality, jobs, and any other criteria. And then based on that, set priorities for the allocation of their own budgets. The second interesting point that we have seen a lot is integrating climate change into national development plans and public financial management systems. So as the governments are making decisions of their budget allocations and tracking the effectiveness of their resource use, they are looking also into climate mitigation and adaptation objectives. The third one, which is related, is on public investment management and bringing in climate into the methodological approach that countries define to use and to prioritize where they're going to put basically the public investments and how they're going to evaluate that. And then we have different countries, from large countries, mid-sized countries, but also smaller countries such as São Tomé, Príncipe, a small island state in the Gulf of the Guinea, which is working on this type of methodologies. The second area that I wanted to mention is on central banks. So I think as part of this evolution of seeing more like public financial institutions engaging in climate change, we have seen like 3 years ago, we have requested from our member countries to look and to provide dedicated support to central banks. So the first step was to learn about it. So we reached out to more than 80 stakeholders from our membership that work related to central banks. And there were two messages that were very clear. The first one, that they were very aware of the risk, the physical risk, but also the transition risks of climate change. So they're seeing it as a material topic that they had to look into. But the second one, that there was a need for technical assistance, capacity building, and specialized knowledge for them to be able to bring these elements into their ongoing work. So based on that, working also very closely with NGFS and other members, we set up the readiness support for greening central banks. So we are currently working in more than 25 countries, providing support to central banks to building roadmaps, working on climate risk frameworks, stress testing methodologies, improving data collection, taxonomy and disclosure, as mentioned by Rustam. So several countries are interested in building those and understanding how they can make it local, but also interoperable with other taxonomies that are out there. And I think an interesting case from the region, we've been worked with the Central Bank of Georgia, the Bank of Georgia, through EIB, which is a member of the partnership, and they have supported Bank of Georgia in first setting up climate change scenarios, so localizing the NGFS scenarios to the context of Georgia, and now working on increasing data availability to also do stress testing and better understand the transmission channels and where they need to focus. And in parallel, the program is also looking into financial sector institutions, private sector institutions, to better understand and build capacities for them to report, but also to integrate into the governance strategies and processes, climate change as a key element. The third area that I wanted to mention is also a more integrated planning and programmatic planning for adaptation investments. So a shift, a shift from, I think we
had a beautiful diverse
yes.
representation in this COP.
Exactly.
So enjoying traditional songs from neighbors.
So
can you still hear? Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, then we can continue.
So
yeah, okay.
a third interesting development is on the shift. Okay. A shift from a project-by-project approach to a more programmatic approach. So in terms of looking like individual transactions and project-by-project, looking at the sectoral trajectories, the transformation that countries we need to see in different sectors, and then thinking about policies in enabling environments, but also financial instruments that can shift into that direction. So I think that's a very interesting development I have seen across the board. And I think the final one that I want to mention is also the recognition of the needs to implement reforms at three levels, I would say. The first one is at the system level. So it's quite complex to assess climate finance for many countries. It's each financial provider, so even the MDBs, multilateral climate funds, they have their own processes, their own systems. And for countries with very limited capacity, it's very hard to navigate those and later on report on those. So we have seen, we need to do more, but we have seen progress on the MDBs, we have seen progress on coherence and alignment between the multilateral climate funds, and also the collaboration and coordination against them, and with the clear view that there are needs to basically leverage more private finance as based on each kind of like dollar of public finance that is out there. The second one is at the country level, the emergence of discussions on country platforms and collaborative approaches between public and private institutions to drive investments. So I think a recognition that that's a need. And there we have seen very interesting discussions in the context of the G20, in the context also of the MDBs, multilateral climate funds, and kind of like strengthening and creating capacities at the country level to be able to leverage and to boost those type of partnerships. And the third one is on the emergence of innovative financial instruments, or not only emergence, but also scaling of existing ones, right? We don't need new things for the sake of new things, but basically scaling them. And I think that's an interesting point, back to the point of the microfinance fund that is launched today, is how to leverage those lessons and those experiences to then inform the wider ecosystem. And that's one of the areas that I was talking to Paul, that we'll be very keen on collaborating with Incofin based on our experiences and bringing this to a wider constituency that can benefit from that and leverage those institutions. So thank you very much.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you very much, Joachim, for these very interesting examples, also with a zoom on this region. From where we sit, what we see actually as a company working globally, there are many things happening on different levels in different countries, but indeed there is this small alignment. You know, everyone goes on its own path, in its own directions, and for global investors as our kinds, it's quite a challenge actually to follow, you know, any specificity of every market, and we are investing in more than 60 countries. And especially in the area of climate finance, so something which is considered green finance in one country can be considered as greenwashing in another market. So it's really challenging to follow and to adapt. And for us, we also need to harmonize our processes, investment processes, etc. So how to harmonize then our processes with such a diversity? And with this, I would like to go back to you, Rustam, because we have heard that the Central Bank of Azerbaijan, ahead to this COP29, brought up an initiative to work on the global green taxonomy. So you've mentioned about the national green taxonomy, but what about the global green taxonomy? Is it happening? Are there any hopes that we will get to this unified approach one day?
Yeah, thank you, Elvina. Formally, Central Bank is going to announce the roadmap on advancing interoperability and comparability of sustainable finance taxonomies on November 15th at Finance Day together with its international partners. Today, I can briefly talk about rationale for this initiative and why Central Bank decided to come up with this roadmap initiative. But at the beginning, I want to clarify some terminology. The roadmap, as its name says, is not about harmonizing taxonomies. It's not about single global taxonomy. It is about increasing interoperability among different sustainable finance taxonomies. Having the single taxonomy is not realistic, and there are no need for that. So now let me talk about why Central Bank decided to come up with this initiative. When it became clear that COP29 will be in Azerbaijan, we at the Central Bank were thinking how, apart from our roadmap, which is domestically oriented, we can contribute global agenda climate fight against climate change. And in this regard, we have conducted a stock-taking exercises, and we come across a number of observations which led us to come with this initiative. So first is that everyone agrees that finance is crucial to be on track towards climate goals. And many leaders, policymakers call for quantum leap in climate finance in order to meet Paris goals. At the same time, we know that there are enough money within global financial system. According to McKinsey information, 132 trillion assets under management. At the same time, we know that SDG-aligned sustainable investment accounts crossed over 30 trillion in 2022. And but at the same time, we see that emission is rising. Of course, a number of reasons for that, and one of the reasons could also be what's the quality of those investments, sustainable investments. And we have also looked at a number of good studies, one from Bank for International Settlement, saying that label of green doesn't necessarily mean that issuer are carbon efficient or eventually reduce emission over time. So inconsistencies between different approach labels lead some fragmentation. And therefore, central bank decided that perhaps our contribution, tiny contribution could be that we can bring some clarity, rule to sustainable investment definitions. And we have worked with our partners, International Finance Corporation, Sustainable Banking and Finance Network, International Platform on Sustainable IPCF, and UNDP to develop the roadmap advancing interoperability and comparability of sustainable finance taxonomies. And we believe that through this roadmap, we can contribute to the fight against the climate change. And we also understand that there are already some initiatives by international players like G20 and others to increase interoperability of alignment approaches. And particularly, I would like to mention that G20 Sustainable Finance Working Group has issued 6 voluntary principles to increase alignment among different taxonomies. And our initiative roadmap is actually focused on operationalization of those principles by providing technical methodologies, guidelines, and approaches to reach that goal. And it's only beginning, and it will continue with the implementation. Let me stop here. Thank you.
This one? Yeah? All right. So I was thanking our speaker, and with the hope that we will keep our eyes open for the coming days to hear more announcements and more details about these global initiatives, harmonization initiatives. Paul, you have talked about the scale, your optimism, and that to be able to make impact, you need the scale, yeah? And to be able to scale climate finance, we need partnerships. So we've heard some partnerships from Joachim on the high level, on the country level, successful countries. Maybe you could share a bit of your examples at Incofin with our funds, what kind of partnership we have set up which allowed actually to scale impact in certain areas.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me? Yeah, this one works. Yes, like you said, a partnership collaboration, that's essential, and that's why we're here today. Why there are so many people here today or during those 2 weeks. Partnerships are essential. But next to partnership, there are also other items that are essential, and I would like to mention them before talking about our examples. The first one is we need to change the narrative from 2D to 3D. 2D is risk return, 3D is risk return impact. We need to work on that change in narrative. Secondly, we need to develop products where every investor can find his or her sweet 3D spot. So some are more interested in return, other it's really stability, low risk, other it's high impact. Every investor has a different sweet spot. So we need to develop products where everyone can find something for what he needs. And that's why we work often with blended finance products. And I'll give you some example of blended finance products. And then thirdly, that's where partnerships are extremely important. When we develop impact funds, we need anchor investors. We need those pioneers who are saying, okay, I'm willing to put the first 25, first 100 million to launch the project. And those anchor investors are very, very important. Now, a couple of examples. This Incofin Climate Smart Microfinance Fund. It's a microfinance fund. As I said before, we have 25 years of track record. So this product provides, what kind of risk return you can expect from that product. And so we've developed this product which is good for a whole range of investors. We believe institutional investors will be very interested in the product. The challenge that we have now is that those institutional investors say, look, we will only invest once you have 100 million. Why? Because we don't want to invest less than 10 to 20 million, and we don't want to take more than 10 to 20% of the total exposure. So we need, and that's what we're working on right now, we need DFIs, we need the foundations or families to fund those first 100 million. Another example is our Water Access Acceleration Fund. So we've developed last year a fund that provides access to clean water. The goal is to provide access to clean water to 30 million people. It's a private equity fund, and it's a blended structure with a first loss in it. So 20% of the fund is protected through a first loss tranche. We've done that in partnership with a company, Danone. So Danone wanted to do something. They were looking for professional asset managers who could help them raise more money. And so in partnership with them, we've launched that fund. They've put 10 million in the fund, 5 million first loss, 5 million normal shares. And then we've knocked on the doors of DFIs, of foundations, of banks, of families. So we have a whole range of investors in that fund. Another example that we like to give is the Global Gender Smart Fund. It's another microfinance fund that focuses not on climate adaptation here, but on on women empowerment. And if you look at that fund, you have different asset classes. I was talking about the sweet spot for everyone. That fund has first loss tranche, has senior shares, senior notes, junior notes. So a whole range of products that fit the different needs of different investors. Impact is the same impact for everyone, but different risk-return equations. So partnerships are essential.
Thank you very much, Paul. To sum up our session and conclude, maybe, I would like to ask my final question to all of you. What are your key expectations from this year, COP29, in one or two phrases, please?
Okay. Expectations, I have a lot. Summarizing in two sentences is a challenge.
3 maximum.
I think it's finance, definitely. Adaptation finance, and new and more ambitious NDCs ahead of COP30 in Brazil. So I think those 3 areas.
Thank you.
Definitely, it's finance. Moreover, in coming 5-6 years and beyond, the scale of the finance will be important, the speed of the finance, and quality of finance. And my expectation is that outcome of COP29 will be more alignment at different levels, at level of standard setting bodies, regulators, rating agencies. Second, at the level of multilateral development banks towards strengthening country-led and country-owned platforms. So these are, I believe, my important points. Thank you.
Thank you, Rustam.
And then from my side, three things: scale, scale, and scale. No, but I think scale is central. That's for sure. Another thing that, another hope that I have is that we don't forget the micro and small entrepreneurs. I think there are opportunities for grassroots resilience. You know, micro entrepreneurs adaptation. We should not forget them. That's my hope.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Paul. So with this, I would like to thank our distinguished keynote speakers and panelists for sharing their insights. I personally took a lot of pleasure in our discussion, and I heard a lot of very interesting projects. We also learned about persisting challenges and some potential solutions which could open up, hopefully, during and after the end of this event, and most importantly that they are also being implemented and not just discussed. And before we close, I would like to bring your attention to this wonderful scarf that I'm wearing. For those who don't know what it is, it's a kalagay. It's a traditional garment here in Azerbaijan, which is also a symbol of heritage and sustainability. It is handmade, and every kalagay has a unique print which is made on sustainable techniques passed from generations to another. The reason why I'm wearing this kalagay is twofold. First reason is because I want to pay tribute to this country which put so much effort in gathering us all today and so much effort in our organization of such a huge event in a very short period of time. So I would like to thank the whole organizational team of COP29 for this opportunity. And the second reason is actually kalagay is also sensitive to climate change. Why? Because it's made from natural silk, and because silkworms, as many other agricultural species, are very sensitive to the changes of temperature, to the rainfalls, and overall climate changes. And it affects their life cycle, their production, and the quality of the silk. And with this new initiative of Incofin, Incofin's Climate Smart Microfinance Fund, we want to make sure that kalagay craftsmen and all other small producers and farmers and micro and small businesses have access to information to realize how climate change is affecting their businesses and have access to funding to prepare their businesses for these coming changes. Thank you very much for this event. Thank you.